It was a quiet evening in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. Emma, a young writer, had just moved into a charming old house on Willow Lane. From the outside, it looked perfect. A fresh coat of paint, a neatly kept garden, and neighbors who waved as she pulled into the driveway. It was the kind of place you see in magazines, a dream come to life. But the moment she stepped over the threshold, a subtle chill crept over her skin, a feeling she couldn't quite place. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, watching her. That first night, as she lay in bed surrounded by unpacked boxes, she heard it, whispers. They were soft, almost polite, seeming to curl out from the very walls around her. "Who's there?" She called out, her voice a little shaky. The only answer was the familiar silence of an empty house. She brushed it off. New house, old pipes, an overactive imagination fueled by too much coffee and the stress of moving. It had to be. The days that followed were a blur of unpacking and settling in, but the whispers didn't stop. In fact, they grew louder, more distinct. Sometimes they would murmur her name, a faint Emma ... That would make her freeze mid-task. Other times they were more insidious, mimicking voices she knew. She'd hear a snatch of her mother's laughter from the empty hallway, or her neighbor's friendly greeting from a room she knew was vacant. The most unsettling was when it mimicked her own voice, replaying a phrase she'd said just days earlier. Emma tried to reason with herself. "It's an old house," she'd repeat like a mantra. Old houses settle, they creak, they groan. But the logical explanations began to wear thin when things started moving. A book she was certain she'd left on the coffee table would be back on the shelf. A dining chair would be pulled out from the table, as if someone had just stood up. And the mirrors. Every mirror in the house seemed to hold a reflection that was just slightly off. A shadow where there should be none, a flicker of movement in the background, a distorted version of her own face, staring back for a split second. One night she'd had enough. The whispers were incessant, a constant nagging presence in her ears. Standing in the middle of her living room, heart pounding, she shouted into the emptiness, "I'm not afraid of you. Show yourself." For a moment, there was dead silence. Then the entire house seemed to respond. The walls felt like they were vibrating, a low hum that she could feel in her bones. The lights flickered wildly, plunging the room into strobing darkness. And then a single voice, clear as day, whispered right beside her ear, "We've been waiting." That was the turning point. This wasn't just an old house. Something was truly wrong here. Emma began to dig into the property's history, a desperate search for answers. She discovered that the house on Willow Lane, built in 1920, had a long and troubled past. It had changed owners dozens of times, far more than any other house on the street. As she spoke to neighbors and sifted through town records, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every family that had lived there reported similar experiences, the whispers, the moving objects, the unnerving feeling of being watched. Some families had moved out overnight, leaving furniture and belongings behind, fleeing from something they couldn't explain. Her research led her to the local library's microfiche archives. There, buried in a newspaper from the 1950s, she found it. A small article about the mysterious disappearance of the Henderson family who had lived in her house. One morning, they were just gone. The breakfast table was set, the car was in the driveway, but the family of 4 had vanished without a trace. The police found no signs of a struggle. It was as if they had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. The article mentioned one peculiar detail: faint. Strange symbols had been found etched into the concrete walls of the basement, symbols that no one at the time could decipher. A storm was raging outside that night, rain lashing against the windows, thunder rattling the old window panes. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were a chorus of voices, all calling her name, urging her, pulling her towards the basement. Fear and a morbid curiosity warred within her, but the pull was too strong to resist. With a flashlight gripped in her trembling hand, she descended the creaky wooden stairs into the damp, musty air below. She ran her light along the concrete walls, searching for the symbols from the newspaper article. And there they were, almost faded into the stone. As she traced them with her fingers, a section of the wall seemed to give way. It wasn't a section of wall at all. It was a door perfectly camouflaged. With a shuddering groan, it swung inward, revealing a small, hidden room she'd never known existed. The air inside was stale and cold. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on walls covered with old framed photographs. They were pictures of families smiling, posing in front of her house through the decades. The Hendersons from the 50s, a family from the 70s, a couple from the 90s. As she looked closer, her blood ran cold. In the background of every single photograph, blended into the shadows or peeking from a window, was a faint image of the family that would live there next. She saw the Henderson family in a photo from the 1930s, years before they ever moved in. Then she saw the most recent photo on the wall. It was of the elderly couple who had sold her the house. And there, standing behind them, a ghostly figure in the window, was her. A picture of her, taken before she had ever even seen the house. The horrifying truth crashed down on her. The house wasn't haunted by the ghosts of people who had died there. The house itself was the entity. It was alive, aware, and it didn't just house its residents, it consumed them. It fed on their lives, their experiences, their memories, adding them to its collection. It wasn't choosing its next victim, it had already chosen. Panic, pure and absolute, seized her. She scrambled back up the stairs, the voices in the basement now screaming her name. She didn't bother to pack. She grabbed her keys, her phone, her purse, and ran out into the stormy night. She didn't look back as she sped away, but in her rearview mirror, the house on Willow Lane loomed silently in the darkness. As she glanced at it one last time, a single light flickered on in her bedroom window, and she could have sworn she heard one final whisper on the wind, calling her name. Emma never went back. She left everything behind. But sometimes, late at night, when she drives past the old neighborhood, she can't resist a glance down Willow Lane, and every time she swears she can see a faint light in the upstairs window, and the reflection of a young woman with her own face, staring out into the night, waiting.